SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Runners, are you ready? The 15th annual Viking Half Marathon, 10K and 5K will take to the streets on March 28th in Greenwood. Registered now at VikingHalfMarathon.com. Paid for by the Greenwood Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday Eve. Man, oh man, it's a warm one out there, but it's going to get cooler again, right? A front coming through, I believe, this weekend. It's going to...
Should be sometime late Saturday night, Sunday morning when the temps start dropping and don't stop dropping for a little bit.
Wow. Put us back in winter. Right?
Almost. I mean, it's not going to be blisteringly cold, but there is a chance for it to dip down around freezing.
Okay. Well, it's not too bad. But it's still February. It's supposed to be like that. Hard to believe,
the groundhog said we had an early spring coming. So.
Yeah. Hard to believe. Daylight saving time coming up. Be 2 weeks from this weekend. That's incredible. It's just right around the corner. So, I mean, I normally associate that with warmer weather. And I'm sure we'll get there eventually. Back to it. It's warm today, though, that's for sure. Like 81 or something. Isn't that today's high? Last time I checked.
For central Mississippi, yeah.
Man.
Which that surprised the heck out of me when I asked Alexa what was the weather going to be like. And it was a high of 80. I said, what?
That's a bit unusual for this time of year, I would say. Well, we got a great show lined up for you today at 10:35. It's Congressman Michael Guest. He'll call in from Washington, D.C. and update us on everything going on Capitol Hill. We still have the issue of the old shutdown. Department of Homeland Security still doesn't have all their money to operate at full level. So that's an issue. Yeah, I didn't close the door in the studio. I can hear somebody talking out in the hall. I'm concerned about the lights are out. We got a couple, at least one out in here. So, and then we got, Senator Joey Fillinage. Hopefully will be able to join us in the studio. If not, he'll call in at 12:05. He, of course, is available, we hope. Serves District 41, chairman of Judge B and vice chair of the Ethics Committee. He'll give us an update from what's going on under the dome at the Capitol in the state of Mississippi. Also, you've seen this, UMC has sustained a ransomware attack. And they are crippled from an IT perspective. And, of course, you might as well say the entire outfit is crippled when you got that going on. And they're grappling with that right now. Man, I hope they get that resolved in a hurry because, obviously, you're talking about lots of inconvenience and just other issues that affect patients more than anything that you'd have to be concerned about. Are you seeing this? It's just, I heard about it at breakfast this morning real early. Someone in my breakfast group informed us of that situation. I don't know that there's any additional update that's been released, other than we just know that they got hit with a pretty significant cyber attack, and they are managing it and trying to make some adjustments to the operation. What do you see there?
Yeah, the statement released that you can see from SuperTalk News on supertalk.fm.
Okay.
Says, quote, due to a cybersecurity attack, many UMMC IT systems are down, including access to our electronic medical records. We apologize for this unexpected disruption, and we will provide further updates as information is available. The statement added that all UMMC clinic locations statewide are closed for the day, while outpatient and ambulatory surgeries, procedures, and imaging appointments will be rescheduled.
Man, oh man.
Hospital services are continuing for the time being.
You know, we talk about it a lot here. You know a lot about this. Of course, this was my career for a long time before I started doing this. But whenever I go out and speak to mainly civic groups, to some extent political organizations, I do speak to both, and academic circles as well. You know, I always pose the question, is this perhaps the greatest threat to our country? Just the threat of cyber attack. Because it's not something we talk about every day. You don't hear politicians run around talking about that. As you know, we got to do something about these cyber attacks. However, when it happens, and it's rather frequently, you see a sizable organization that's hit, because that's typically who does get hit. Because
at least those are the ones you hear about.
Yeah, that's right. Smaller ones do as well. There's no doubt about that. But it's kind of a different sort of bent to it. It's more in phishing emails and stuff like that.
So if the larger you are, the more email you have being sent around,
100%.
The more likely it is to happen.
That's absolutely right. But as far as a ransomware attack, just we're seizing your systems. We're freezing them until you pay us. Usually it's larger enterprises that are targeted for that. And that's what we have here. Now, the electronic medical record system used by UMMC is a very widely used software system called Epic. And so that's got, I mean, it really is the operational system that is used for everything from scheduling to, of course, recording in a patient's health records, everything involving the provision of care really is tracked in that system. It's a giant, very powerful, sophisticated system. There are half a dozen or so, I guess, popular products. Epic maybe is the one that probably the most widely used in the country, honestly, in the larger healthcare environments. But so, as they say, outpatient, same-day surgeries, appointments, scheduling, everything from scheduling appointments to scheduling procedures and surgeries is all done with that tool. It's managed in that tool. And then, the recording of a patient's medical activity and everything that happened there, of course, is input into that system, transcribed into that system. And so when it's down, it causes big old problems, and that's kind of where we are right now. Hopefully they get this resolved.
As for your question about the danger.
Yeah.
A vulnerability is really only dangerous if you have the vulnerability overlapping with either a vulnerability, like the vulnerability overlaps with either a complacency within a system, whether it be complacency in security or complacency in protocol, or if the vulnerability overlaps with a desire for the party that's exploiting the vulnerability. So in the case of a large company, a hospital, something like that, you have a vulnerability and you have that desire for the large goal, for the large gain, potential gain. What you risk with the other danger is complacency.
Yeah.
And that's when you risk attacks by usually state-sponsored kind of stuff. If it may not rise to a state attack, but state-sponsored attacks like the ones you see coming out of North Korea and stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole heck of a lot they can gain outside of like stealing cryptocurrency in North Korea. So they have that desire, but that desire is not a monetary gain. It's a desire to exploit complacency for political gain and saber-rattling.
So here's the concern. Is UMMC, are they going to be forced to pay up to regain access to their systems? Probably. I don't want to speculate on their behalf. This is just my opinion at this point. It's pretty difficult. It just depends on if they've done the dual extortion move and all that sort of stuff. And I'm pretty sure, Rhino, that UMMC's Epic EHR environment is premise-based. In other words, it's installed on UMMC's owned infrastructure on their campus, not in the cloud. The company offers both, and more of the enterprises, the large healthcare providers, are moving to their cloud model. Yeah, and I was right. They own 79% of the EHR software market. Incredible. Coming right back in the Element Well studio. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
So with this UMC temporary shutdown due to the cyber attack, man, you got to feel for those who were scheduled for surgery today and or appointments, especially if you're already stressed out about an appointment concerning a medical issue. Gosh, and you're told can't do it today. And you're all built up.
If you haven't had solid food since 8 o'clock last night.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. So
you're already going to be a little grouchy.
Yeah. Maybe ingesting antibiotics pre-surgery or something like that can really rattle your stomach as well.
The luckiest people are the ones that get prescribed the anti-anxiety medication before they show up.
Yeah.
So they're just already a little loopy when they get there. So they just got to be a little loopy today for nothing.
So, I didn't realize they have 35 clinic locations across the state. I knew it was a lot, but 35 is a bit surprising. They, as you said, all outpatient, same-day surgeries and imaging appointments canceled will be rescheduled. That's what their official statement is. You can see that on our supertalk.fm website, the story and the official statement. It again, recovering from this ain't no fun. And I know I worked with those guys a lot through my career. They have very capable, competent IT people. I'm quite confident that they've got all the best-in-class cybersecurity protection technology deployed and up-to-date and managed. That's been my experience. We did a lot of that for them, going back to the 90s, in the early days of needing to protect your networks from intrusion. Of course, that's way more complicated and sophisticated today. The bad guys are a lot craftier, and the technology to defend against them is a lot better as well. It's a cat and mouse game. But here's the thing. It ain't perfect, as you know. You're just always vulnerable. And I sometimes use the analogy of radar and radar detectors. Remember when that was a thing, and you go by the latest radar detector, and then all of a sudden all the law enforcement that had radar would go upgrade their radar, and it would cannibalize your radar detectors. It's just constant. Who's out front? Similar situation here, honestly. And again, you can follow all the best practices, all the policies, all the standards, have everything up to date, have the most powerful technology deployed, and the bad guys are still pretty dang good, unfortunately. And so, gosh, I hope that this situation gets resolved.
And it's not like that back and forth is anything new.
That's right.
I mean, when you think about information security, you got to go back a ways before it was not a problem. Like, you had kings and queens sealing letters with wax stamps with their seal to protect the information in the letter from spying. Because if your seal's broken, well, somebody read this.
You can make
the information security is an old tradition. It's just modern tools.
Yeah, that's right. It's the way in which we transmit and communicate and share information, and so that has evolved and thus have the tools to secure it. You could make the case that next to human life itself, information comes in second as the most precious, valuable asset. Think about your own personal, private information, for example. So we have that problem going on, and we pray, we hope. And like I said, I know those folks are just working diligently, feverishly to resolve this. They realize all the folks who rely on the care they deliver and all the services provided, they get it. And again, hopefully a quick resolution will come. In the meantime, we can't get any alcohol here in the state of Mississippi. It's just, I don't want to make light of it because I know these are serious problems, different category of problems, of course. But you have to admit, it's a strange coincidence that on the same day we have the state's largest healthcare institution, UMMC, that has been kicked in the teeth by bad people, honestly. Do they not really? Why do I even say that? They don't care, obviously. And it's in many respects, as you like to say, it's about attention. It's the freaking attention. There's a monetary, financial aspect of it, but it's the attention that also drives this sort of outrageous behavior. And then we got the ABC warehouse, and I could sit here and we could talk all the show about what led to this. This is nothing new. This has been building up. 199,000 case backlog. By the way, you were saying something yesterday that I wasn't sure it was true. And then after talking to some folks, I think you're right. You actually have to pay, right? You were saying something about that. Even for back-ordered product, you got to pay with the expectation that in a short period of time, your full order will be filled. That looks to be the case,
That's the way I
right?
understood it. And it didn't sound like the usual way of doing business. But, yeah, apparently you order something, say you're trying to get a case of, what's the Dan Aykroyd, he's got the Crystal Skull vodka. Yeah. You're trying to get a case of Crystal Skull bottles. Well, they tell you they don't have any. They're on back order, but pay us, and you're in line.
Right, to keep your order in your position. Yeah. If somebody knows more about that on our text line, let us know, but that's our understanding of it. So a hearing was held. I was down at the Capitol after the show yesterday, and there wasn't a member that I ran into in the halls there that hadn't had their phones blown up, their email blown up by people who are hurting, honestly. And when you got businesses that can't get inventory to sell, that's what it boils down to. Whether you're in the retail packaged liquor business or you're a restaurant, my understanding is maybe the casinos are working on a workaround where they will work through their corporate headquarters and perhaps to source alcohol. They're working on something that maybe would not break our law, but also position them to receive alcohol so they can function. This is a big hit to our economy and the taxpayers, but first and foremost, the small businesses that rely on this for their livelihoods. When you start talking about letting people go or you got hourly workers that you tell them to stay home because you don't have anything for them to do, you don't have any alcohol to sell if you have such an establishment. So this is a big problem, and this is hopefully going to heighten the attention even further on the state being in the alcohol distribution business. Again, the challenge, and this is something that was set in motion quite some time ago, the challenge is that there's a component of our revenue and our budget that is derived literally from the profit made on the distribution of alcohol. So the state is essentially serving in the role as a private distributor, if you will, that's in the business of producing a profit through distribution. That's what the state does here. So it's more than just the taxes levied on the alcohol, it's the profit. There's a margin associated with the cost at which ABC obtains the goods, the alcohol in this case, from the manufacturer, and then there's a markup on that when they sell it out the door to the retailers, to the package stores, restaurants, casinos, etc. That margin goes into the general fund. And so the question is, how do you replace that if we were to just get out of the alcohol business? You certainly could do it by levying higher taxes. Now, the question is, does that deter people from buying alcohol because it's more expensive? You know, the whole free market problem that is always, of course, front and center when you're talking about buyers and sellers. So that's the issue there. But, man, hopefully that gets resolved as well as soon as possible. A lot of talk in this country in various states, cities about a millionaire tax. The state of Washington, which does not have an income tax, they're looking pretty hard at passing a 9.9% tax on earned income over $1 million. That would remove it from the list, a very short one. 9 states, 10 states that don't have an income tax? Now, this is a state that has experienced monumental economic growth. They're the home of 2 of the tech titans, Amazon and Microsoft. Yet, they still can't make ends meet. They want more because they ain't never met a dime they wouldn't and couldn't spend. That's the bottom line. And, of course, the same kind of junk is coming from New York with Zoran Mamdani as well. We're going to step aside for a break right now. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Coming up next, it's Congressman Michael Guest. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're pleased to welcome now Michael Guest. He's Mississippi's congressman who represents the 3rd District. Congressman Guest, thanks so much for joining us today.
Gerard, great to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. So we're checking in with you to see what's the latest on Capitol Hill. I know we got a partial shutdown. It's not getting quite the attention in the media that the big total shutdown did back in the fall. But it's still a problem, and it doesn't seem like that Republicans and Democrats are any closer to sealing a deal to get the Department of Homeland Security fully funded.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Of the 12 spending bills, this is the only spending bill that is still outstanding. The president has signed the other 11 spending bills into law, and so all other government agencies are funded until the end of September. The Department of Homeland Security makes up roughly 22 agencies that fall under the Homeland Security umbrella, 260,000 employees. The largest agencies that people would be aware of are things such as CBP, the United States Coast Guard, TSA, FEMA, ICE, Secret Service, Homeland Security Investigations, CISA, which is important today, particularly in light of the recent cyber attack that we see was experienced by the University of Mississippi today, UMC Hospital.
Yep.
And so there are a large number of agencies that have a law enforcement mission, a first responders mission. And, Gerard, I mean, it shouldn't surprise any of your listeners, that the Democrats, the party of defund the police, the party of abolish ICE, that they don't want to pay our men and women of law enforcement. And the thing that we need to remember is that these people are working. 90+% of them are essential employees, which means they're working and they're not getting paid. And this is the second time in right at 3 months that they're going to have to be going without a paycheck. They just came out of a 6-week shutdown where they weren't paid as part of the big shutdown. Now, as we look at the more targeted shutdown, we've got men and women of law enforcement, some 260,000 families that will be going without a paycheck once the next pay period begins.
Congressman, most of the consternation and the objection coming from the other side of the aisle concerns just the operations of ICE, correct?
Correct. If you look at what the Democrats are saying that their rationale, if you will, for the shutdown involves only one agency, an agency that makes up roughly 7.5% of the total employees under the DHS umbrella. And so because of their dislike for ICE, and look, they've disliked ICE for years now. Yeah. I remember, I think it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was the first one that came out and said, abolish ICE.
Right.
And that has been a mantle of the progressive left now for some 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And we know, look, we've got quite a few number of Democrats who want to defund the police. And so because of their desire to get rid of ICE, and I think that's ultimately what they want to do. Yeah. They talk about wanting to make reforms. I think the ultimate goal is to get rid of ICE in its entirety and that there not be any interior enforcement. But because of that, they're holding all the other agencies hostage, and no employee of any other agency that do crucial work are going to be paid during this shutdown.
Right. So, and just recently, I think I came across a report that the Democrats in Congress are trying to halt plans for some new detention centers, that they're objecting to that, right?
That's correct. Look, anything really that falls under the Homeland umbrella, there was money in the reconciliation bill for DHS, particularly for ICE, to build new detention facilities to increase detention capacity. We as Republicans, we think that's important because it helps expedite people through the legal process.
Yeah.
What we saw under the Biden-Harris administration is people would come across the border. They would do a quick screening of those individuals. Often that screening was very insufficient, in my opinion. They would then be given a notice to appear in court. Sometimes those notices were 2, 3, in some cases 4 years later. They were released into the interior and in many cases never seen again. With the detention capacity, this allows us to be able to know where those individuals are, expedite them through the process, let them make their claims of asylum, which we know that 90+% are denied, and then quickly return them to their country of origin. And so Republicans support the additional detention beds, but as you mentioned, Democrats are opposed to that. They want to go back to the catch and release program that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration.
You're right. They don't want ICE agents to wear masks. They want to require body cameras. And I think there's some interest on the Republican side on the body cameras, is there not?
There is. As a matter of fact, in the bill that we negotiated, the Homeland Security bill that was negotiated with Democrats, the bill that they later withdrew their support for, there was substantial funding in that bill for body cameras. There was money in the bill for de-escalation training.
Yeah.
There were things in there which we thought were bipartisan in nature, that we thought would be a good faith effort for us to try to work with Democrats on those issues where we could find common ground. And so, I think you find widespread support of that. I mean, I think you start looking at that other areas such as their desire for judicial warrants, wanting to give or require them to follow the guidelines of the jurisdiction in which they're working as far as how their policies are carried out. Things like that I think are non-negotiable. But there are things that Republicans and Democrats do agree on, and I think body cameras is a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get this resolved. I know we're running pretty close to a point where there won't be sufficient funding to pay, right, the TSA folks.
That's right. There is a possibility. I mean, Trump was able to use tariff money during the shutdown in the fall to try to pay military, the men and women serving the military.
Yep.
I don't know if that would be something that the president would try to do, but you're right. I mean, you're going to start seeing this as we see that we're going to have instances for which law enforcement needs to respond, whether that be a cyber attack like we've seen here at UNC, if there's another natural disaster and FEMA has to respond. As TSA agents at some point are going to have to continue to work. You see the potential for a slowdown in air travel, which we saw during the previous shutdown. And so while the impact has not yet been felt, I think over the next probably week and a half, you're going to see more and more of the impact on our federal workforce, and it is going to impact the economy and the everyday lives of Mississippians.
Congressman, I know you hear it as well, but just from the perspective of a voter and a citizen, man, we sure do spend a lot of time just wrangling about these sorts of details just to get basic funding up so that you guys can address some of the more critical issues. But you got limited cycles, and it seems like all the air gets taken out of the room on this.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the Democrats now have become the party of not only defund the police and abolish ICE, they're now the party of government shutdown. I mean, they led the longest government shutdown in the fall. We're out of that shutdown. We work extremely hard, the appropriators on both sides of the aisle, both appropriators in the House and Senate. We believe that we have a deal that the Democrats have told us that they would support if it came to the floor. We were able to get that passed out of the House, but in light of what happened in Minnesota, we see that the Democrats in the Senate refuse to support that. And look, as long as we have the filibuster, as long as it takes a minority of Democrats to be able to shut down the government, they're going to use that ability, Gerard, in my opinion, to stop the momentum of the Trump administration. Yeah. And I think they want to see this shutdown happen during the middle of President Trump's State of the Union. I think they're going to use that. They're going to publicize that. But look, this shutdown is strictly on the backs of the Democratic Party. There is no way that they can blame Republicans. We have tried to work with Democrats. We have done everything within our power, and they submit a list of unreasonable demands and expect us to meet that. And Republicans are not going to meet the demands of the Democrats, and they will just continue to hold our federal law enforcement hostage.
Man, oh man. We got a break right now. If you can hang, we got a short segment after that. We can dig into a couple of other topics.
Would love to. Yes, sir.
Congressman Michael Guest is joining us from Washington. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons?
Interrupt this program. Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Congressman Michael Guest. So, Congressman, the SAVE Act, got to talk to you about that. That did make its way through the House. It has been sent over to the Senate. I believe one Democrat in the House voted for it. Ultimately, the bill, once it made it to the floor, I believe all Republicans did support it. There was a bunch of rumors out there about Representative Thomas Massey opposing it. But when I dug into it, it looks like he voted against the rule that allowed the legislation to advance. Once it did come up for a vote on the House floor, he voted for it, correct? That's my understanding.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that is correct. He voted against the rule, but once the bill came up for final passage, Thomas Massey and, as you said, all other Republicans, and there was a single Democrat, Henry Cuellar,
right,
who represents a district in South Texas, who actually supported the legislation as well. So at least we can say that there was bipartisan support for the SAVE Act.
But what's amazing is, and I'm sure you've heard it as well in your position and your colleagues there, is all the fear-mongering from the Democrats about all this is it's another thing where there's so much misunderstanding and misinformation, I should say. There's not a requirement that you have to prove your citizenship to vote at the precinct, at the ballot box. The requirement is to prove your citizenship to register to be able to vote.
That's right. A one-time requirement that you have to prove when you originally register. And so hopefully individuals are registering very early in life, 18, 19, 20. And then once you've met that requirement, you don't have to meet it again. Now, there was a requirement for photo ID, but many states, including Mississippi, we have photo ID. It works extremely well. I think it helps prevent voter fraud and increases election integrity. And so, if you look at the legislation and you really dig in, there's, while you're right, there's a lot of fear-mongering by the Democrats. What they are saying is not true and not accurate.
Right.
And so I do think it is a great piece of legislation. I'm glad we were able to get it out of the House with all Republican support. And look, if you look at, and I know you've probably talked about this, if you look at polling nationally, voter ID polls at over 80%, over 70% of Democrats support voter ID, over 90% of Republicans support it. And so it is a very popular issue that the Democrats are pushing back on. And the only thing I can think of is they're pushing back on it because they don't want to prevent the possibility of voter fraud.
I guess so. And we should also point out this only applies because the Congress only has the power to federal elections. Right. So we're not changing the way local elections.
Correct. So if California and New York and their state elections or local elections, if they want to have different rules and they want to let people vote without an ID, and if they want to allow all kind of things which could promote to shenanigans within the election process on a state election, they're able to do that. This only applies to federal elections, which we hold every 2 years. But I do think that it is a great piece of legislation. I applaud Chip Roy and others who drafted that. And I hope and pray that we're able to attach it to something that must pass in the Senate so that ultimately this will become the law of the land.
Yeah, because we got to get past the filibuster right in the Senate to pass this as a standalone bill.
That's correct. Yes, sir. That is correct. So whether we attach it to a future funding bill or something else of that nature, I think we're going to have to make sure that we find a vehicle, a legislation that will have to pass the Senate and add this to it in hopes that it can become law. Particularly the voter ID, would love to see that in place before the November election.
Agree. A couple of minutes left. Congressman Michael Guest is our guest. Anything you're working on in particular? Anything flowing through your committee?
I mean, one of the things that I'm tracking is the events in the Middle East. We have seen a huge buildup of military assets in the Middle East over the last several weeks. That intensity has increased just over the last several days. We now have 2 aircraft battle groups, aircraft carrier battle groups there in the region, the Abraham Lincoln and recently the Ford, which is, I think, just right outside of the Mediterranean. We've seen a huge surge in particularly our aerial assets as well as our naval assets.
Yeah.
And, we know that there are ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran over Iran's nuclear program. But it does seem to me, Gerard, just what I'm seeing, that it appears more and more likely that there will be a military strike on Iran in the foreseeable future. And I would not be surprised if we don't see something happen before the State of the Union on Tuesday night. Again, this is just information that I'm getting off of publicly available information. There's not any briefings or anything.
Okay.
But I do think it is something that we need to pay close attention to because we have the largest buildup of military assets in that region since the Gulf War in the early 90s.
More deployed this morning, as I have seen in the news. Well, we appreciate you joining us, as always, Congressman Michael Guest. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Gerard. Good talking to you.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
State Senator Joey Fillinage on deck for 12:05 today in the Element Wealth studio. The Dow taking it on the chin today, down some 345 points. The NASDAQ also down. All the indexes in the red. The Bears firmly in control today. Up on Wall and Broad, concerns about geopolitical tensions out there. You just heard Congressman Michael Guest state that, just from publicly available information, he foresees perhaps an attack. I believe we moved a big warship into position, right? I mean, we've been moving military assets in the region, but another one this morning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that was carrier group led by the aircraft carrier Ford.
That's
that he
right.
was talking about.
Yep. Okay. So it does look like that this country is poised to take some sort of action, and the president has issued very stern warnings to that effect. We'll see what happens, but you're right. We got State of the Union address coming up, and the congressman said this may happen before then. Now, several of the distinguished members of the House, not sure about any senators on the Democrat side, said, well, they're just got something else to do the night of the State of the Union address. Even, however, their leader, Hakeem Jeffries, he's lambasting them a bit. He's imploring them to attend. We shall see. And to be respectful and to carry on with the decorum Americans expect in the U.S. Capitol. We shall see what happens there. Of course, it's rhetorical, but why do they do this, Rhino? Because we talk about it. Unbelievable. He's just starving for, thrive on, fueled by, obsessed with attention. Plain and simple. They accomplished zero with their antics. But, man, they get a bunch of attention out of it, I guess. The Mississippi Lottery Corporation is announcing a new game, $1 million for life game. $1 million a year for life. I should say a year. $1 million a year for life. That starts this Sunday, February 22nd. You can purchase a Millionaire for Life ticket. It's a national draw game, similar to the Mega Millions and Powerball. A grand prize of $1 million a year for life and a second-tier prize of $100,000 a year for life. These are both annuity-type prizes, of course, for the natural life of the winner. You could also choose a one-time option, so you can get a lump sum that would be less than, guess who's involved in that? The old actuaries. They're the ones that do all the tricky math behind that. A drawing every night. Millionaire for Life offers odds that this is required by our law. You have to publish the odds of winning. Overall odds of winning anything, 1 in 8.46. Now, I don't know what the different prize levels are, but my guess is that obviously means that there's probably some entry-level type prizes, a couple of bucks there.
Like a free ticket.
Yeah, exactly, because that would be considered a prize. But the grand prize odds, 1 in 22.9 million. More winnable than the top prizes in many of the other national draw games, says the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. There you go.
Yeah, those are better odds than the Powerball.
That's right.
For the Mega Millions.
It's pretty cool, though, to think about. I think that will get a lot of interest and probably see some ticket sales as a result. Millionaire for Life. Ben from Madison on the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. Crazy to me Congress is okay with the president unilaterally waging war without authorization from Congress. They have failed in their duties. You know, you and I looked this up not so long ago about when the last time the Congress actually was involved in the declaration of war. And it gets really sticky and complicated as to how far can the commander-in-chief go to order military action, a strike. And it's like not considered war or something to that effect. Or it's the same as tariffs, honestly, Ben. I admit that I have some concerns about that. And it's not really about whether or not I agree with the action, be it tariffs or whatever may happen vis-a-vis Iran. It's about, I get worried when some crazy person's in the White House that does really bad stuff, abusing such powers.
And you do have to remember that Congress, for the most part, washed their hands on this with the 2001 authorization for use of military force.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't give the president unilateral, we get to go to war powers, but they stopped just short of it.
Yeah. So, I hear you, Ben, and I share your concerns. I think a lot of Americans that are more concerned about adherence to the Constitution and, more importantly, just limiting the power of any branch of government. I mean, our whole system is predicated on that. It's one of the reasons why the country was founded, because too much power was vested in a monarchy. They could just do whatever the heck they wanted. So, yeah, so I share your concerns with that. But I also believe that stability in that region is paramount, and I think that the world would be a whole lot better off. That never does that, again, justify violating our law. But this is a very thorny, complicated, sticky issue. I mean, you could make the same case to all the dadgum executive orders that come out of the White House, regardless of who is president. I've said so many times that our lives are way more affected by the bureaucrats that carry out and execute on those orders in the agency complex, whose names none of us even know. They have more power than the dang people we send up there in the Congress at the end of the day. because precious little can make its way through the Congress. And it all goes back to Obama. I got a pen and a phone. Now, he wasn't the first, honestly, to abuse the executive order privilege. And, in looking back, my guess is the founders just had no idea that we'd end up so divided, right? And I think that's why we don't have stronger protections against overreach of a branch. I just don't think they envision the division that we see today. And
it's because when they were drafting things, it was not a way to maintain status and wealth for life.
Totally. You're so right about that. And again, we talked earlier, because it was President's Day, about George Washington saying, "Appreciate it, fellas, but it's really time for me to go home and step out of the way." That's unthinkable today. Unfathomable. Oh, wait, you don't make me president till I die? Where do I sign up? Can you imagine a political figure in our society, in our country today, that would push back? I can't think of any. There may be some, and I don't want to be unfair here. But just given the fact that we have so many that do make a career out of it, and the founders' vision was, you get called away, you leave the family and the farm, and you go serve a little while, and you get your butt back. And in the meantime, your friends and your neighbors and your churches took care of your family and your farm. Literally, that's the way it worked. That was their vision. It was truly public service back then. You're sacrificing your livelihood and being away from your family, because you didn't just travel from Washington back and forth on airplanes back then. That wasn't possible. You did that because you were called to serve, but you got back. Okay, next.
Because of that, because there was such a turnover, you didn't have 50, 60, 70-year careers where they can completely change and reshape the way something like Congress works.
Totally true. It's a good point. But, now it's always climbing the ladder. Next, right? Just progressing through the various offices. And that's not the way it was designed or supposed to work. Look at it in Mississippi. We have the same thing here. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
We've done all we can do.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Today on In the Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear part one of an interview with sales guru and motivational speaker Mike Farrell. You can listen to In the Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. So, also, don't forget to check us out. I don't say this a whole lot, but, we're not just over the air here, Rhino. We're on YouTube, and you can download our app, watch or listen. Catch us on C Spire TV, Channel 70. I ran into somebody Monday. I was just telling Rhino in the doctor's office. Said I went for a little something after the show, and a patient was departing, checking out, said, "I just saw you on TV." So that's how it works. And then the whole wait room's like looking at me, a couple of people came up. No, it's fine. It's kind of cool, honestly. You never know. But there's a whole bunch of people out there, as you well know, that are tuned in, and we're very grateful for that. I want to make sure that is clear. That's what makes all of this possible. So the markets have tempered their losses a bit. The Dow now down 239. The price of oil, of course, is rising because of the prospect of instability in the Middle East, as Rhino and I were just talking about, and the Congressman Guest on earlier indicated he feels like there may be some action taken. And that is a very controversial matter. Our friend Ben from Madison, he expressed concerns about that. Mose says basically years ago the president can deploy troops to protect American interests for up to 90 days without congressional approval. Yeah, and maybe this fits into that category. Now, some may argue, how does this protect American interests? That's extremely subjective, of course. Gene asks a question. I just talked about the new game being launched by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation this Sunday, $1 million a year for life. New drawdown, national drawdown game. Gene asked a good question that comes up a lot. I get asked this just as a member of the lottery board, Gene from George County. What if I handed off a winning $1 million a year for life ticket to a younger family member? Carol in George County just asked that question. So tickets are bearer bonds. It's like if you found dollar bills on the street. They don't have somebody's name on it, where it's their property, that it's associated with them. Same with lottery tickets. Whomever brings them in to redeem, in this case, you'd have to bring it in to redeem it, and of course there are going to be some tax withholdings and the old 1099 generated. It's whomever gives that Social Security number, that's who gets the money and pays the taxes.
But you couldn't go too low as far as age.
No,
they got to be of legal age to play the game.
Correct.
To turn the ticket in for winnings.
That's exactly right. Now,
you can't give it to a 3-year-old and go, here, have $1 million for life, 3-year-old, because they're not going to take the ticket from a 3-year-old.
That's exactly right. Now, I don't know about this game specifically, Carol, but some of these games you actually can take an annuity, name a beneficiary, so there are some nuances to all that. It's kind of like PERS. Honestly, I don't know about this one.
But didn't that one say for the life of the winner?
That's right, the natural life of the winner. So
I would imagine you probably can't pass that one down.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. So as far as I know, it's not associated with anybody. Don't know. But all that's figured into the actuaries, right? So they haven't figured that, well, what most old people are going to, they've figured out who plays these things. They've done all that math to make sure that this thing's viable, right? So when you think about the number of tickets you sell and then having $1 million a year winner, I guess it's every day, because they said they're drawing every day. So I don't know if that means it's for the grand prize every day. I don't know. I'm just passing on the minimum press release that came from the MLC. We were told about this in our board meeting Tuesday, so I apologize for not having all the details. My guess is the network will get the president, Jeff Hewitt, on one of the shows to give us the rundown. And it's also probably on the website, all the details. That's by law, by the way. All of those details and odds have to be disclosed by the Lottery Corporation. So kind of an interesting deal. Like I said, we just learned about this Tuesday, kind of an exciting game that the MLC is launching. It's doing real well, by the way. It's exceeded all expectations in terms of proceeds generated for the state of Mississippi. Something else that came up in our board meeting, Rhino, and we haven't talked about this, is that there's a bill that would change the age for majority, meaning that if you're anyone above a particular, let's put it this way, below that age would be considered a minor and would be afforded all the accommodations in our law that minors receive versus someone with major legal status. So the question came up in our board meeting, hey, would this affect the age at which someone could buy a lottery ticket or alcohol? It doesn't. So this is really for legal standing. It turns out the Department of Revenue regulates that age. That's the way I interpreted it when I dug into it. But the attorney for the Lottery Corporation did provide guidance to the board the next day because didn't want to leave that question hanging. This would not affect the age requirement to purchase a lottery ticket. So, and alcohol fits into the same bucket there. Of course, that doesn't matter because you can't get any alcohol right now. Oh, man, what a mess. If I win this, my wife's putting me on life support, says somebody. Can there be co-owners of a ticket? I haven't seen the details, but I've never known that to be the case. And again, there's never really been a situation where in selling tickets, you don't sign your name, you don't authenticate, and it's not recorded and associated with the ticket. I can't imagine this would be any different.
Well, I mean, they're probably thinking of like an office pool where everybody pitches in $10 and you go buy that many tickets or whatever.
Yeah.
And if somebody wins, everybody wins because everybody paid into the pool. But that wouldn't be up to the lottery people. That'd be up to whoever you were in the pool with, drawing up a binding contract and then sending off whoever. I don't think you could show up as the pool to the lottery and go, hey, we all chipped in on this. Can you split it up for us? I don't think they're going to do that.
And, in fact, there's some language in the Lottery Act that actually prohibits the sort of grouping and combining to try to corner, a prize because you're increasing your odds, because you're putting a bunch of money. You're actually not supposed to do that. Honestly, if there's a little pool in an office.
Yeah, there's a difference in an office pool and the kind of stuff that they've made movies out of nowadays where you buy $30,000 worth of dollar tickets, but you wind up winning $100,000.
Right. Syndicates come together, essentially. But the key thing is one person's going to go redeem that ticket. They're going to have to provide their Social Security number, and the taxes are coming to them. So whatever you work out with your friends on this, just remember one person's going to have to pay that on their tax return. You can't issue the prize to multiple people and split the taxes, if that's making any sense. So gets a little wonky there. Would jackpot winners need to sign the ticket in their LLC to retain their anonymity? So that's Jeff in Forest County. So, Jeff, in the state of Mississippi, our law does not require disclosure of the identity of the winner. Some states do. But in this particular state, in our state, the Lottery Corporation does not disclose the identity of winners at any level. And whenever you see the lottery promoting a winner, that's because they have obtained their permission to do so. That's the way that works. So hopefully that squares that away for you. CC in Senatobia says, old Mondani is putting his free groceries out there, and others are going to see that and want it, which is all part of his communist socialist plan. Yeah, there's only one problem with that, though, CC. It looks like he's about to raise property taxes, which is kind of ironic in that it is going to raise the cost of living in the form of rent and housing for the very people that he said he was going to decrease it for by taxing those dirty, greedy, rich people. This ain't working out too well. All of this crap you see going around the country, there's a bill in California. You've seen this, Rhino, that even has Gavin Newsom, their governor, and Bernie Sanders at odds. Bernie's flying to California because even Newsom says, I don't want this big millionaire tax. We may lose some of them. He came to his senses, and Bernie's going out there to encourage him to support it. Unbelievable. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. We shared with you earlier that UMMC is experiencing some problems with their EHR, their electronic health record system. It's called Epic, and that's because they were hit with a cyber attack. It's got them crippled at this point. Canceled everything today, right, Rhino? All appointments, surgeries, etc. Man, no update.
Yeah, everything except hospital services, those are still available at the moment.
Okay. So this software product that we talked about earlier, Epic, I misspoke a bit. They have about 40% of the EHR market share, but about 79% of the big institutional hospitals do utilize the product. They also have a patient portal tool called MyChart. Most people that go to the doctor, if they're affiliated with a healthcare organization that uses Epic, are familiar with the MyChart tool. I think it's pretty cool, actually. More than 305 million patients have an electronic record in Epic. That is mind-boggling. So, yeah, it was a question Artie in West Point asked. NMMC, that's North Mississippi Medical Center, uses Epic as well. So, yeah, Artie, just to clarify, they don't use Epic for MyChart. I get what you're saying there. Just trying to clarify here. Epic is the big EHR product. MyChart is kind of a module that interfaces with it that is used by patients to access their information stored in Epic. But, yeah, would they be affected as well? Don't think so, Artie, because the fact that it's just UMMC that's down strongly suggests that they are operating on a premise-based environment, meaning all the infrastructure, all the server storage, networking assets are actually owned and operated by UMMC, housed at UMMC. That's what powers the Epic environment that UMMC uses. If there was some sort of cyber attack on Epic's cloud environment, all of those institutions, in general, you would expect all of those healthcare organizations that use the Epic tool on a cloud consumption basis, cloud architecture basis, they would be affected. Generally speaking, if it's a cyber attack against the cloud environment, that would affect all the hospitals that are utilizing Epic in a cloud model. The fact that this is confined to one institution here, I haven't heard about any nationwide outage, right, Rhino, with respect to Epic. Here's an example. Remember United Healthcare's insurance clearinghouse claims processing unit? I don't remember the name of the company. Remember they got hit? And all healthcare organizations that dealt with that, which was in the cloud, by the way, were unable to file claims for like a couple of months till they got that resolved. There was a huge backlog of that, and United Healthcare is the largest health insurance carrier in the country. So that's different. Good point. Good question, though, Artie. Appreciate that. Yeah, 305 million patients with an Epic record is mind-boggling. But, yeah, as far as I know, UMMC does operate Epic in an on-premise environment is what it's called, versus a cloud environment, just meaning that it's on their owned and operated assets. There was something else. Gerard, look up Wesley Hunt for Texas Senate. He talks about only doing 2 terms and coming home. I have seen that. He's running for Senate as a Republican. He's currently serving in the House. He is vying for Senator John Cornyn's seat. What'd you look it up the other day? He's been there since 2011 or something, right? A long time. I think he's seeking his 4th term is what we determined through that exercise, is Senator Cornyn. He's also being...
Since 2002.
Okay, pardon me. That would make sense. That would be that would work out to be in his 4th term. Yeah, that's right. He would be seeking his 4th term. So you got Ken Paxton, the AG of the state of Texas, also in that race. So you got three fairly high-profile individuals competing. We shared with you the other day, the polls show, most polls show that Paxton's actually leading Cornyn. A couple did have Hunt in the lead, a couple did have, but most of the polls and the average of all the polls shows Paxton leading, the AG. And then on the Democrat side, that one is incredibly controversial, especially with James Tallarico, the Democrat who serves currently in the Texas, I think it's the Texas Senate. I could be wrong. It may be the Texas House. But a fairly young individual that's running for U.S. Senate as a Democrat, taking on Jasmine Crockett, currently in the United States House, representing a district in southeast Texas there. And that one's controversial because Tallarico did an interview and on the Late Show, right? And
with Colbert.
With Colbert, and CBS says, you can't do that. Can't air it. Wouldn't air it. And I think he's gotten more mileage out of them not airing it than he would have if they aired it. Because it's all sitting out there on YouTube. That's not subject to the various FCC rules. And all it would have required is that they bring Crockett in, Jasmine Crockett, for the same amount of time. We know that. We deal with that in our world. So pretty sure that's the main FCC rule, right, that governs that is if you have a candidate on, whomever the other candidates are in that race, if they request, you don't have to extend an invitation to them, but if they request to come on and you've had their opponent on, you got to let them come on for the same amount of time on the same show. So, same network. And I don't know why CBS said, yeah, we're not going to do it.
Well, that's the sticking point because Colbert and CBS seem to be disagreeing on it. CBS put out a statement. Colbert responded to the statement. Tallarico put out a statement saying they raised $2.5 million in the 24 hours since. Because when they first conducted the interview, both Colbert and Tallarico tried to point the finger at Trump and say Trump's FCC would not allow them
That's what they
to air the interview.
I'm not sure that's the truth, though.
And then CBS came out with the statement saying, no, it's because FCC equal time rules.
Yep. Because,
it's just been back and forth ever since.
Yeah, so they were trying to politicize it and essentially...
It's basically Colbert picking his favorite in that particular Democrat primary.
That was the bigger issue right there. I think that's what was at play. And Colbert's still there till, May? Is when he's out of there, right? I mean, he's essentially been terminated, but he's still got some time left on his contract. Yeah, but Tallarico, like I said, not only that, you saw his fundraising boosted after the controversy because it's in all the media, just like we're talking about it here. So he got more attention over not airing his interview than he would have had they aired it, arguably. It would have just been another day on Colbert.
And you wound up with Crockett having a press conference defending Trump's FCC.
That's true. For keeping him off, right? Yeah, Trump kept him off because he's just not good. You got to elect me. Oh, my gosh. It's so insidious. Robert from Jackson says, Gerard, don't you think they never envision an unwillingness to compromise that to our commentary a moment ago about the founders, how they envisioned our government would work, and that, as Rhino says, it was expected to be a career. Yeah, I do think they envision compromise, but I'll say this, Robert, I don't think they saw the sort of polarization we have on so many things that they probably are just scratching their head like, you guys are arguing over how many sexes there are, for example. Like, I just don't think they saw that. And I don't think they foresaw...
Because they never envisioned people with room temperature IQs ever being elected to the halls of Congress.
That's exactly what I was about to say. And I was actually going to take it a step further than that. To the White House, to have a person like a Joe Biden that says, hey, you border protection people, stand back, let everybody in. No, the founders never envisioned that we would just cede our sovereignty at the borders like that. Think of all the problems that's caused. That's why the government's currently shut down. This wouldn't even be necessary had they just secured the dang borders. That's why the president had to come in and First of all, he didn't pass any new laws. He just said, hey, go back to doing your job. Boom, the borders are secure. And then trying to root out all these bad actors that are in our country that crossed over during the Biden regime. And that's causing all this consternation. Yeah, that's what makes it so hard, I think, is that they just never saw, like you said, we'd have people with room temperature having the levers of power, shall we say, to just do stupid stuff that we're all paying for, that now we got to undo and fix and unravel, which is why we can't get anything done. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. Senator Joey Fillinage joins us at 12:05.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. On the C Spire text line, mailman Clayton asked, Hattiesburg Clinic runs Epic. Are they affected? Yeah, as far as we can tell, this wasn't an attack on Epic's cloud environment. So, and I don't know if Hattiesburg Clinic is a cloud customer of Epic, or if they too run it on their own on-prem environment.
UMMC has a clinic in Hattiesburg, and that they would be closed for the day because they've closed all clinics statewide for the day.
Yeah, but he's talking about Hattiesburg Clinic, the organization, which is a big outfit that I think is part of Forest General now. And at one time, they were the largest healthcare outfit on a clinical basis in big customer of mine, by the way, in the state. So I'm assuming we would hear if there were other hospitals affected that are running Epic. I've seen no nationwide report. Thus, that leads me to believe that UMC does still run Epic on their internally housed on-premise IT infrastructure environment, and which means that they are responsible for securing it, and that the attack occurred and broke through their cyber defenses in this ransomware attack and is seized up on their internally operated Epic system, meaning it's not affecting users that consume Epic from the company's cloud environment, cloud offering. Yeah. Nonetheless, it's a big problem, and we hope it get resolved. And this is an interesting question. It's a good one. That let's see if I can find it again. Why has there not been a program developed that prevents ransomware from happening? I don't even know where to start in answering that question, but it is incredibly complicated. And so the short answer is there's a whole industry of cyber defense technology. It's a massive industry, and there are a myriad of tools used to protect against all sorts of malicious cyber attacks, including ransomware. But they ain't perfect. And the bad guys are really good about developing technology that circumvents all those. It would be like, why can't we invent a door lock that keeps people from going through the door? I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but...
No, I mean, about the simplest you can get as far as the cybersecurity and ransomware would be the only 100% effective system against a ransomware attack would be a PC plugged only into the power on the wall.
Not connected.
Not connected.
Correct.
And sitting inside a Faraday cage.
It
just would not be feasible as far as using it for any kind of interconnectivity, because they're either going to sneak in on one of the ways it's connected to the world.
Yep.
Or they're going to be allowed in through phishing or password scam or any number of ways where they didn't really have access until someone that had access accidentally gave it to them.
That's correct.
And those two things, like sneaking in a back door or gaining access through nefarious means, there's not a whole lot of programming that can stop that 100%.
Correct. But there are lots of hardware and software tools that are designed to prevent malicious attacks, including ransomware, at all levels of the IT stack, both in what we call the core and the edge. Edge being your end-user devices, for example. And then you've got network devices that connect your end-user devices to the network and to the core systems, to servers and storage and so forth. There's just a whole world of that. And then there's application security, like stuff you see in your email. Most people have seen that it's for external, internal. There's messaging security. That's a whole science unto itself, as you know.
And the other thing to remember is a vulnerability only really gets fixed once it's discovered, and it's not always discovered by the good guys.
That's exactly right.
Like an analogy would be in race car driving, like in NASCAR. They only really write the rule after somebody broke a rule that either wasn't there or they had to clarify the, like if the rule says the spoiler can't move. Well, if you make it out of something flexible and you're going 200 miles an hour and it's moving, is it against the rules?
Yeah.
Then the governing body has to come in and go, you can't make the spoiler out of something flexible that moves at 200 miles an hour because the original rule only said it couldn't move.
Yeah. Well,
that kind of stuff.
I think about problems we have just with plain old physical transportation infrastructure. Oh, wait, that caused a wreck. We might need to redesign that, right? We don't take action until something happens. Yeah, all good questions, but it is unbelievably complicated. And keep this in mind, even the absolute best in the world in software engineering and development still get hacked, right? When I came back from the RNC, remember Delta? They've got as good as you can get. Heck, Microsoft himself have been hacked. SolarWinds, the network management software people, they got hacked. They're just, the bad guys are really good. It's a cat-mouse game, and it's 7/24, 365 every nanosecond of the day. You got to worry about it. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Senator Joey Fillinage.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3 of MidDays. It's the afternoon portion of the program on this
Friday Eve.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Senator Joey Fillinage. He represents Mississippi's District 41, serves as chairman of Judiciary B, vice chair of the Ethics Committee. Is that still current there? Senator, welcome.
Hey. Thank you, Gerard. Yes, you got it all going on correctly this morning.
All right, awesome. So I know we were hoping you could come be with us today, but I understand you're busy. You guys are still taking up legislation on the floor. You're in that period during the session where you're taking up mostly bills that got transferred over from the other chamber.
You're exactly right. We're sort of at the halfway point in the session. Not calendar-wise necessarily, but as far as the work goes. So last week we had to clear all of the general non-revenue bills out of the Senate floor and over to the House, and likewise the House did the same with their bills. And so today we just finished up about 3-4 minutes ago taking up appropriations bills that are subject to, of course, a little bit later deadline. Since they're revenue-related measures. But, yes, we've been working this morning right up to about 3-4 minutes ago, so it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So give us an update. Anything in particular that crossed through the Senate on the floor today that you found interesting or didn't go the way you thought or did go the way you thought, whichever?
Yeah, no, today was more or less about the budget, and I think things are clicking along, as they normally do. Usually with the appropriations side of the calendar, the House usually initiates about half of the agency appropriations, and the Senate does about half, roughly. And so we were doing our part, taking up a bunch of different agency bills, the Department of Audit, the governor's mansion and all of his affiliated agencies, a lot of different appropriations bills, and then some special fund bills like, the Board of Chiropractors and different individual special fund agencies as well. So it was nothing surprising this morning, just kind of rote work on the floor. Explain that process, Senator, to our audience here, the agency funding process. They're responsible in general for drafting and developing their budgets, and then they come meet with you guys and say, hey, look, this is what we think we need to run our agency. Exactly right. There's a process that takes place even starting back before session begins with the legislative budget office hearings where the individual agency heads will come present to a smaller subset of legislators, the ELBO, we call Legislative Budget Office and Committee, and they hear initial estimates as to, how many pens they think they may need to add or how many they've got vacant, the personnel employment slots, people. Yep. And then also any sort of deficits that they may be facing at with the Division of Medicaid, for instance, things like that. And so we kind of get a snapshot around the November time frame before session begins in January. But then once January rolls around, of course, each of the appropriations committees on both the House and Senate ends break out into subcommittees, and each of those subcommittees are tasked with a subset of the agencies like IHL or Department of Education or Medicaid. And so a subset of the appropriations full committee focuses just on specific agencies and does a bit deeper dive into their numbers and what they're requesting, if any deficits are present, why do we have deficits, what's happened, that kind of deal. And then they roll those out of the full appropriations committee ultimately and onto the Senate and House floors. So that's what we're taking up even this morning from the past 2 hours. Okay. So one of the things that is getting a lot of national attention for sure and is the number 2 spending line item in our state budget, and that's Medicaid. And the reason it's getting a lot of attention is because of many of the reforms enacted in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act back last July, and how that might affect our federal share, our FMAP, it's called, the federal match on our Medicaid program. Just for the benefit of the audience, that last time I checked, about a $7.5 billion total price tag for that, mainly funded by the federal government, and then the state kicks in just under $1 billion, and then you got some provider taxes that are added to the mix as well. It's huge, but there's some concerns. Is there not about? I'm seeing the CBO predicting just a steady increase in Medicaid spending that trickles down to us at the state level. It does. You're exactly right. So it's a huge, huge program. And, of course, Mississippi being one of the poorest, if not the poorest state in the nation, we have a disproportionate impact from any changes in the Medicaid budget. So you're right. The Big Beautiful Bill had some changes in it as it relates to Medicaid across the country. And one of those changes we're hearing about is what's called the error rate. So when we put someone on the Medicaid system here in Mississippi, although it's a federal program, it's administered through the states. So the Mississippi Division of Medicaid has to take applications from people that apply for the program, and it's our responsibility to vet those people to make sure that based on their income and other factors that may impact whether they should or shouldn't be eligible, if we put them on and they ultimately are proven not to be eligible, or vice versa, if we deny somebody and ultimately prove that they should have been approved, then that creates an error rate for the state. And our error rate isn't super high. I think it was somewhere in the 6 or 7%, but, which doesn't sound high, but if you look at it across the country, other states have much lower rates. And so one of the provisions I understand in the Big Beautiful Bill is it starts penalizing states that have higher error rates. So They want those error rates to come down. And if you don't bring them down, then there are penalties. There are fines, or you don't get as much money, and then the state then, of course, is responsible for paying that money back. So that is certainly a concern that we're all discussing, how to get more accurate information on the front end so that we make the right call as to whether to put someone on or to deny someone Medicaid coverage. Of course, you want it to be accurate just for the citizens' well-being as well, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact that the federal government is certainly cracking down on those error rates, and we're going to have to pay particular attention to that moving forward.
And the same reform is applied to the food stamps, the SNAP program as well, and our error rate there would put us, I think, near the top of the penalty. That, as it says, there's like a range of error rates. There's a penalty associated with each range. I think we're like the next to the highest level in that respect last time I looked at it. Bottom line is this could cost the state, from a budgetary perspective, well over $100 million, right, Senator, if we don't clean up the error rate.
That's exactly right. And again, we naturally want to be accurate anyway, but once you have that financial incentive, it certainly brings it into a whole different category of urgency.
Pretty good motivator, I would say.
It is.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this is something you guys have been talking about. I've been at the Capitol. I've seen you a couple of times. I know that members are cognizant of this.
Absolutely. I mean, we are, and we want to be good stewards of the state's tax dollars, and that's one way we don't want to be wasteful, and we don't want to get penalized by the federal government and have to pay extra monies in that could otherwise be spent on, other programs on roads and bridges or police or education.
Yeah. So I'll just ask you directly here, are you concerned that, given the fact that we're cutting our revenues, presumably, by reducing our income taxes, but we're still looking at spending a lot more money, teacher pay raises, possibly error rate penalties, the cost of Medicaid rising, general inflation? Do you think, Senator, we may have a budgetary problem in a few years? I mean, we're riding pretty high right now with tidy surpluses, but that may not be permanent.
Yeah, I've been here long enough to see it go from, large surpluses, immediately after gaming got approved in the late 90s, to having deficits, to going back through coronavirus and COVID, to having surpluses again. So it certainly is a pendulum that swings back and forth.
That's a good way to put it, yep.
You certainly want to be on the surplus side of things as opposed to the deficit side of things, because it just makes life so much easier for everyone if we can stay in the black.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into the situation where you have to either cut services or raise taxes, which are the only really two ways you get out of the red. So we certainly prefer to be in the surplus category, but you're exactly right. We have ridden sort of a wave ever since the COVID era with additional monies and, of course, economic growth, thankfully, in our state that has led to additional money. We have done some tax legislation over the past couple of years that you've covered and been very involved with. And I think those are positive things, but we always have to be cognizant of what are the long-term effects of the policies that we make now, not just how does it affect us today and tomorrow.
Senator, we got a break right here. Can you hang with us for another second?
Of course.
We got Senator Joey Fillinage on the line. We're coming right back, folks. Thank you.
For a flipping good time, get on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back from the Element Well studio. We are visiting with Senator Joey Fillinage. So, Senator, the Speaker's priority, as you are well aware, the bill known as HB 2 that was disposed of quite rapidly by your colleague, Senator Dennis DeBar, seems to put the House and the Senate on this contentious posture. Can you share your viewpoint on that? Is that what you're seeing? I'm seeing bills get double referred, for example, in the House, and that is usually a sort of a political retribution move.
It can be. I mean, it's unfortunate, I'll be honest with you, because, we are all conservatives in the governing majorities of both the House and the Senate, and you certainly look for opportunities to work together with your colleagues down the hallway. On this particular issue, obviously, there's strong disagreement.
Sure.
And that's okay, because, we're a deliberative body, both the House and the Senate. We're supposed to take these issues on and debate them and deliberate on them and come up to what we think is the best outcome. And so, of course, we did some, public-to-public type transfers, legislation early on in the Senate, even before House Bill 2. And then House Bill 2 came down with, all the various pieces and parts that is included. And, of course, I'm not on the Senate Education Committee, but when it came down here, it was not well received and not passed, obviously. So that has caused, obviously, some contention between the two bodies and certainly the two education committees in the House and the Senate. But ultimately, I think what we all want to focus on is providing the best educational opportunities for all of the kids across the state of Mississippi. That's what we're here to do. And I think we've shown that we've done that collectively together over the past couple of years. We've seen our public school education outcomes go up, and up. And I think that's something we should all be proud of and can all get behind. But obviously, school choice is a contentious issue all over the country, not just here in Mississippi, and it's something we're going to continue to work on. I don't think it's going away, obviously, and we're going to keep working towards finding the right solution.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your perspective on that, and I think you're exactly right. There are strong feelings on both sides of the issue and the argument. The House committee chairman over there in education, Rob Robertson, he says he's done. His committee's done for the year. Did you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I highly respect Rob Robertson. I served in the House early on, my first 7 years in the legislature. I was a member of the House and actually served with Rob back during that time. So he and I are good friends. I highly respect him. I know his heart is in the right place, and he's very genuine about his efforts to advance educational opportunities in the state of Mississippi. That's just where his heart is, and I know him to be a genuine person and wants to do what's best for the state of Mississippi and the educational system here. I respect him if he says, I haven't, heard that from him personally, but if he says, he's done what he's going to do for this session and he's moving on to other important issues, I respect that completely, because, that's one issue and it's a very important issue, but it's certainly not the only issue. We have budgets, we have crime, we have, medical issues, health care related issues that we tackle all in a very relatively short time frame of 90 days. So if you allow yourself to get hung up on just one issue and everything else goes by the wayside, it's really a waste of everyone's time, to be honest with you. Yeah,
I agree, and I'm just concerned that that may be where we're headed. We, of course, had a contentious session last year, had to get you guys back together to get a budget hammered out, and that's not really the best way to run the railroad. I'm not sure if we're headed that way again this year or not. Some of the other high-profile legislation. Well, first, tell us what I'm looking at your list here. What you've got going on that you're trying to get through.
Yeah, so we have been focusing on crime. Obviously, the Judiciary B committees traditionally focus mainly our work on the criminal side of the state code. And I know this session is no different. We passed Senate Bill 2710 earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and I sent it down to the House. It's a juvenile crime bill, and I know there's a companion bill coming out of the House that basically tries to focus on youthful crime using deadly weapons, like violent crime, because we're hearing from police chiefs across the state, sheriff's offices, mayors in particular. The Municipal League has taken a lead on this particular issue this session, saying we have an increase in violent youth crime using firearms. And so they have called upon the legislature to help. And so we are trying to respond to that. And so what we find, unfortunately, a lot of times is when people of a very young age, 13, 14, 15, 16, commit these crimes, sometimes gang-related, and sometimes maybe not. But when you have them, they go traditionally into the youth court system. And it's really hard to track what happens in the youth court system with these particular offenders because of all of the anonymity and secrecy that, we work into the youth court system. And so what this bill would say is if you are a minor and you commit a violent crime using a firearm, you are immediately certified not into the youth court system, but rather into the circuit court adult system, and you're tried in that system as an adult. And a lot of people say, oh, that seems so harsh, you're throwing away the children and, not giving them a chance to rehabilitate and those sorts of things. And, we've had those hearings and we've heard those arguments, but what I'm hearing from prosecutors, from the Attorney General's office, from the policemen, and the mayors are all, we have got to do something different because what we're doing now is not working. We're seeing more and more of these types of youthful violent crimes using firearms, so help us. So we're trying to respond to that, and we'll see, where this bill goes. I understand the House has passed a very similar version of what we've passed, and so I feel like the prospects of us getting this across the finish line are pretty good.
It feels like this has been kind of an active year for your committee, bills that just address and reform crime and consequences and so forth. Does it look like that to you?
It does. We always say at the beginning of the session where Judiciary B is concerned, maybe this will be a slower year. And then inevitably, with all the bills that are filed, because people care about these things, obviously. They want to be safe in their communities and safe in their neighborhoods. We all do. So you have these bills being filed, and, it has not been a slow year. It has been a very active year. And even things like, with fentanyl and these types of drugs, they change the composition of these drugs so frequently, so you're constantly having to update the criminal code to capture as many of the different variants, like a fentanyl, for instance, as possible. So, technology continues to improve, and, people that are in the criminal world continue to find new ways to commit crimes and, on the internet and, catfishing and all the like. So there's never probably going to be a super slow year in the Judiciary B committees, but, it's something we take on as best we can every session and try to produce some criminal code changes that keep up with the times.
Sure. Well, and to your point, we've been talking this morning about the cyber attack at UMMC. I'm sure you've been made aware of that.
Horrible. I mean, they've had to put surgeries off.
Yeah.
These are serious things, and the criminal element is alive and well. I'll just tell you that. They are not taking a session off, and so nor can we. Yeah,
that's totally true. Looking at some other legislation that you had, one, I think, fair banking, is that right? Something related to that?
Yes.
Yeah. What?
So that is a bill that some in our lending community came to me and asked me to file, and the criminal element is always looking at new ways of taking advantage a lot of times of elderly people, and so they take and they manipulate IDs and they steal someone's identity and they go out and take lots of monies out of people's bank accounts, and it's not really their money, but they're pretending to be John Doe or whatever, and they get a bank to give them monies through fraudulent means. And we're just seeing a proliferation of those types of things using apps, using AI technology. It's easy to try to become somebody else on paper nowadays and to create IDs and fake, pictures and images and those sorts of things. So the lending community came to us and said, look, we need to put some more teeth into when people use these technologies to take advantage of our customers, and oftentimes it's the elderly customers in particular that they prey upon, vulnerable adult type folks.
Yeah.
And so that's what that bill is about, is to really put more teeth into the penalties when people use this advanced technology to dupe banks into giving criminals other people's money.
Makes sense. Senator, always good talking to you. Appreciate you joining us today. Senator Joey Fillinage.
It's always a pleasure and honor. Thank you for the good work you do in keeping the public informed. We appreciate you, Gerard, so much.
Appreciate that, Senator. Thank you a lot. Folks, we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate Senator Joey Fillinage for calling in from the Mississippi Capitol. Always appreciate his perspective, giving us kind of a lay of the land there under the dome. Man, a lot of stuff going on, no doubt about that. All right, Rhino, talk about these EVs in Vermont having a little problem up there.
Yeah, the good people of Vermont were told that if the government there spent $8 million on electric buses, that all their problems would be solved. Except for the fact that the buses have to be above 41 degrees to charge, and the buses are in Vermont, in New England, in the Northeast, where it's routinely less than 41 degrees for about half the year.
Cold a lot.
And then you layer on top of that due to a battery recall, that the bus batteries are a fire hazard and cannot be charged indoors or in a garage. You can't even take them into a climate-controlled garage to charge them up. So they're just kind of without their $8 million worth of buses until Vermont decides to thaw out sometime around April.
Other than that, it's all working great. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And then you do a little bit more digging, and it's not just the Green Mountain Transit Company that was impacted by this. Apparently, the entirety of the state decided, we're going green!
Unbelievable.
So you have school districts in the state of Vermont that have electric buses that just aren't busing anymore.
Man, oh, man. It's, again, another situation where you just put your DEI political agenda above just common sense, right? Just plain old horse sense. And you could also make the same claim about the stinky Potomac River. You guys are aware of that by now up there in Washington. It turns out that there was a whole lot of DEI involved in the staffing of the organization responsible for all that stuff up there. That is now surfaced. We are not surprised whatsoever that is the case. But they got them a little problem, and it's just another example of where you didn't hire the best people here for the job.
No.
This was just all DEI hires.
Kind of like the way Pete Buttigieg was in charge of transportation because he liked trains. Apparently, the lady in charge of the water in D.C. got the job because in her interview, she said she drinks tap water.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that. Oh, because she drinks tap water. Okay. That's incredible. So that got her the job just because she drinks tap water. That's just unbelievable. But you've seen this. Now, there's actually video of the person responsible for making the hire. I don't know that I have it here, but this individual talks about hiring on that basis, not on the basis of qualifications or merit or capabilities, but rather literally on the basis of the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or their gender. And so now they got a bunch of people who aren't capable of running that portion of the city's government.
Now, and this is the chain breaking, institutional barrier disruption work that I'm doing. Now I'm on a mission to make sure black and brown kids have experience in the workplace. So then when they're competing in the market,
that's one less check.
That's one less check. And the playing field is leveled because now they got the internship, the same one for the parent who knew the president of the corporation. Now the playing field is level, but that
unbelievable. The playing field is leveled. No consideration or regard for having people who can actually do the work to make sure that we don't have these sorts of accidents, which is now a major problem. It's just unbelievable. But it's not, again, not surprising. You know, we had the same problem, did we not, with the Flint, Michigan water crisis, didn't we? Once we dug into that, find out that was a bunch of DEI hires.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to hammer down all the details, but I've seen a couple of different reports on at least one individual that was working in Flint, Michigan, and was in over his head because he didn't understand water chemistry. Is currently working in D.C. in the same position, in over his head.
Unbelievable. So, of course, we had the plane crash over the Potomac as well not so long ago, and that brought up some possible questions of, did we hire people qualified to do these jobs? The president pointed to that as a possibility. So, not sure if you guys are aware, but a couple of days ago, the Federal Aviation Administration, they ordered airlines. It's crazy you have to do this. Hey, please make sure that the pilots you hire can actually fly airplanes. They're not just checking DEI boxes. Restoring merit-based hiring practices. You got to tell airlines that? Is that where we've gotten?
Apparently.
This sort of goes back to why we have a hard time getting stuff done in politics. And
yeah, because half the country's full of Democrats, and Democrats can't figure out how to pour whiz out of a boot with instructions written on the heel.
It's just unbelievable to me that we're still fighting this problem.
I mean, just look at any major metropolitan city that is run by Democrats and look at how it's gone downhill since the first day Democrats took power.
Because
I challenge you to find a place where Democrats control it and have controlled it for more than, say, 5-10 years, and it's not a crap hole.
It is hard. I agree. It's just shocking to me that you have to do that. And with respect to this spill, yeah, there's a person out there. I don't know if I sent you the sound or not. Did I? With the guy that was talking about that, I'll look at it in a minute here. But I don't know. Of course, there are some who say, "Oh, this is unsupported claims." It's really not the case with respect to the FAA situation, where we had the crash over the midair collision. I think it was last January, if I'm not mistaken. And then
the D.C. water manager?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah.
You know, when I arrived at D.C. Water, this was an organization that looked very similar to our industry. It was predominantly, white male at the top. But this is a utility that's, more than 70% people of color work at this utility. And I really believe, and I still believe, and it has been fantastic. The outcomes have been fantastic. But the people at the top, the executives, the chiefs in that C-suite, they should look like the employees that they serve and that they work with. And the same thing with the community. And so my executive team, looks exactly like the community. It looks like the employees, the staff, be it people of color, women, men. And it's just a fantastic team that has come together to do a lot of great things here at DC Water and in the community for the customers.
So it just seems to me like a person in that position who's responsible for the hiring largely, that talks about the way people look. How can you not perceive that as anything but discrimination and racism? That's what it is. So you're saying that people are only capable of doing those jobs if they look like the people that they're doing the jobs for? Like the water knows that? The river knows that? How did we get here, man? Now there's one thing.
Well-meaning people not wanting to ruffle feathers and cowards unwilling to acknowledge reality.
Well,
pushing back against rabid radicals and idiots.
And that's exactly what we're dealing with. If this were a situation where whomever's in charge, like his predecessor, he points to the fact that, were these white males that were running around here. Like, okay, well, if you could prove that they got the job because whomever hired them gave them preferential treatment and rejected a candidate that is a minority solely on the basis of the way they look, the color of their skin, if you could prove that, which they never have, right? They never can. Okay, I could say that's wrong. But if you're saying quite the opposite, no, we're going to hire this person because of their race, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, their nationality, that's discrimination. It's the old forced diversity doesn't produce any positive value, neither does forced inclusion. When it's forced, it's a farce is what it is. We're coming right back with a final segment on Middays. Stay with us.
Hey, can you blow up some...
Rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Tim and McGee asked who we were just playing. What's his official title?
That is, if I can get it to pull back up, D.C. Water Manager David Gaddis.
Yeah.
And he's the one I was talking about that was in Flint and screwed that all up and then somehow stumbled his way to the top of D.C.
I knew there was a connection, yeah. They actually call him the D.C. Water CEO. And
obviously he's in over his head.
Big time. Not only that, but it's also been reported that he oversaw $520 million of DEI-related contracts. Now, I'm about to get on a rant here, but I'm gonna say I want to. But you've heard me talk many times about the city of Jackson, and there are others, Democrat-run cities in Mississippi. The city of Jackson, the largest, the most prominent, with these procurement policies that give preferential treatment. It's exactly what happened in D.C. Exactly. So, what kind of condition is the water in Jackson? The roads, the parks and facilities, and everything else. The water meters and all that crap. Remember all the controversy? All because it's DEI contracting. They call it minority participation. And I'm going to say again, until we prohibit such practices, which our legislature can do, and they won't freaking do it. The bill got killed again this year. And it simply says you can't give preferential treatment in contracting to people based on their race, their gender, their sexual orientation. That's all it says. Why cannot, in a Republican state, we pass such legislation?
Because there's a whole bunch of chicken, you-know-what, cowardly Republicans that have convinced their voters that, well, I'm 100% MAGA, I'm this or I'm that, I go to church every Sunday or I do. They don't actually give a rip about governing. They just like the attention. It's not just a problem for the left with politicians craving attention. It's a problem on the right It's just leftist politicians and bleeding heart liberals and the blowhards that vote for them tend to be some of the most annoying people on the planet. But it's also annoying when you got people that run as Republican conservatives that don't have a single ounce of spine in their backbone.
Well, here's the thing. It's a disservice by not enacting this very simple bill, this measure that simply prohibits discrimination in contracting and providing preferential treatment. By not enacting it, guess who's paying the price? The city of Jackson, the state of Mississippi. We're actually being harmed by not enacting. Because I believe if they would, we would see marked progress in Jackson. No disrespect to the new mayor, who I know is working, but he also opposes. He also opposes reversing these policies. And I'm convinced that until we fix that, we're not going to be set on a path to repairing the problems in the city of Jackson. There may be other municipalities and counties in Mississippi that also have such policies. I'm not aware of any. I know about the city of Jackson and dealt with them directly as a vendor. Have first-hand experience. By the way, in D.C., in 2024, disadvantaged and women-owned enterprises received 38.65% of the total awards. That's $520 million. And get this, to reinforce the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the water organization here, this one who's the CEO we just played the tape of, the sound of, they actually allow contractors to fall short of project goals without penalties. So normally when you let these contracts, there's some sort of provisions that protect the buyer, in this case DC Water, against not completing the job. Usually have performance bonds. Look, the most onerous can be what are called liquidating damages. Every day you're late, stuff's not working, you're paying us, baby. That's a pretty strong. I've done contracts under that basis, under those terms, but not in D.C. Oh, that's fine. What they said is, as long as you can demonstrate good faith. That's like in the classroom. Oh, you said 2 + 2 = 5. Oh, but you tried. Here's an A. Right? Same deal. It's the march to mediocrity. And now look what we got. The freaking Potomac River full of crap. Literally. That's what that buys you. That's exactly what this did. Please, legislature, pass legislation to ban this practice in Mississippi. The city of Jackson needs it desperately. Man, you'd see the lights turned on, a lot of folks scattering if they were to pass this. That's how you know it's effective legislation. But they won't do it. We are out of time here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.